I talked to a man whose wife had been murdered, and she had been murdered while his children had locked themselves in the bathroom to try to get away from this killer. Yeah. And it was this traumatic, beyond all belief. And the statement that he made to me was, I thought we'd done everything right. I thought we went to church, we volunteered for a Christian ministry, and then this happened to us. Well, I can totally understand his disorientation. I'm totally sympathetic from where he's coming from. But I do believe that he didn't understand what many of us don't understand. And that is that the Bible not only does not promise us that we will always experience good things and health and wealth and ease, it specifically promises us, not just as human beings, but as Christians, that we are going to face adversity, persecution. And we're told, for instance, in 1 Peter 4, verse 12 and following, "Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery ordeal when it comes upon you to test you as though something strange were happening to you, but rejoice insofar as you share Christ's sufferings, that you may also rejoice and be glad when his glory is revealed. If you are insulted for the name of Christ, you are blessed," and it goes on. And there's many passages where Jesus says, look, you're going to be hated by people for my name's sake. You are going to, Paul said to Timothy, he who would live godly in Christ Jesus will suffer persecution. It's a certainty. It's going to happen. So, from Keller's book, and boy, I just highly recommend The Reason for God. And I know a number of you have the book and you're reading along. I just encourage you. You'll be helped so much. And what I did was I just went through chapter 2 of that book that we're talking about tonight, The Problem of Evil and Suffering. And just took some of the quotes from Keller and others. But he quoted this philosopher as saying, if a good and powerful God exists, he would not allow pointless evil. But because there is much unjustifiable, pointless evil in the world, the traditional good and powerful God could not exist. He says some other God or no God may exist, but not the traditional God. So what is Keller's response? He says, tucked away within the assertion that the world is filled with pointless evil is a hidden premise, namely, that if evil appears pointless to me, then it must be pointless. It must be pointless. Meaning what? Meaning that I get it. So he says, we see lurking within supposedly hard-nosed skepticism an enormous faith in one's own cognitive faculties. If our minds can't plumb the depths of the universe for good answers to suffering, well then, there can't be any, because, hey, we would know if there was, because we're so brilliant. We're so smart. I mean, we know everything, right? This is blind faith, Keller says, of a high order. So, and this is something I'm adding, if we say with certainty there is no God, or if we say the world is filled with pointless suffering, what are we assuming? We're assuming that we're omniscient, that we know everything. Because if I were to ask you, okay, let's say right now, and there are in this room, I'm sure some skeptics, and wonderful, glad that you're here. Very welcome. I hope you come to the rest of the series. But if I were to say to you, of all there is to know in the universe, what percentage do you know? Now, if you're really, really proud and arrogant, you might say 1%. And then you'd be really grossly exaggerating. Seriously, of all there is to know in the universe, you know 1 out of every 100 things. Maybe you're just really proud and you would say, hey, I know 10% of all there is to know. Well, then let me ask you this question. Let's say you were right, which clearly you're not, but let's say you were right and you really did know 10%. Is it possible that in the 90% of all the things in the universe you don't know, there exists a God? Is it possible that in the 90% of the things in the universe you do not know, that there are actually reasons that make sense for the suffering you regard as pointless? Is that possible? And if your answer is, no, that's not possible, then you're actually claiming 100% knowledge, right? And therefore, you can say, I don't believe in God, but in actual fact, you're claiming to be God. Because who but God would know everything?